I spent £700 on Pokemon games. Hello, my name is William, I am 30 and I've not played a physical Pokemon game since I was 11 years old. But now I am a grown-up man with grown-up money and I can buy all the Pokemon I want. I'm a grown-up with grown-up money. I am now a homeowner. Me and my wife have escaped the rental market, and that means that I don't have to do that endless cycle of using one deposit to recoup the payment of another deposit to another landlord. My wife and I received our full deposit back from our last rental, and since we didn't really need it for 2 years and I don't have another landlord to pay it forward onto, I kind of figured that's free money.
Free money!
My wife got her nails done and paid off her credit card. I have done this. She's the sensible one in our marriage. I plan to use that money to buy my own Pokemon games and create my forever saves. Now, I don't know if you youths know this, but games used to be a lot cheaper than £70 a pop. At the minute, I am waiting to see what the monthly releases are on PlayStation Network so I can play games for free that were released 2 years ago, because I can't afford that. But games from 30 years ago, such as the Pokemon games, have only gone up in price, to the point I think actually a physical copy, which you'll see later in the video, will cost more than GTA 6. Yeah, ridiculous. So I knew I was never gonna collect like all of the games with their original boxes and manuals, because that's so much money that I don't have. Wow, no, I'm not a squillionaire. I don't buy £10,000 Pokemon cards. Little Gem Mint 10 Charizard there, that cost me £45. That's enough for me, that's rich enough for my blood. So I wanted to see if I can get the games cheaper than at the UK's go-to second-hand gaming and electronics shop, CEX. For anyone outside the UK, CEX is a lot like America's GameStop. So to try and get it cheaper than those prices, I had to go to that worldwide garage sale. Now, fully boxed cartridges are going to be cheaper on eBay because people want to make their pennies and then walk away. They want a quick transaction, but that's still going to be too much money for me, so I'm going to be hunting for the best deals I can find. I really needed to be savvy and try and make my money go further than I originally would, because I don't even have consoles to play these games on. So that was an additional purchase I need to make. So in this video, we're going to break down all the purchases I've been making over the last couple of weeks and compare them to CEX and see if I have managed to beat the second-hand shop. A small note, in my eBay purchase price, I am going to include delivery because let's face it, I probably could go into town and buy these from CEX, but that probably would have been more expensive in this day and age because of the price of petrol. Am I right, guys? Really need to make my money go. I probably shouldn't have done this. Hindsight, probably shouldn't have done this. My dad said I should take my wife away for a weekend, and I bought Pokemon games. With that being said, saying I need to make my money go further, I've not been keeping track on how much I spent. Let's find out, shall we? I'm scared. Whilst I could have looked at buying the console that each game was released on originally, I really want to try and stick to the £700 budget. So I need to make the most of my money. I need to buy consoles that can play multiple generations. My first eBay purchase was an Aqua Nintendo 3DS, and I've actually never owned a 3DS before, so I think my last console that I owned handheld was a PSP, so this felt real nostalgic. It was also this purchase that made me realize I was committed to spending money for this video, because not only did I not have a game at this point, so I just owned a console, the first game I purchased was a Generation 3 game which cannot be played on 3DS. So I knew I was in for a penny, in for a few £100 here. The 3DS itself is in pretty good nick, a couple of bumps, a couple of scratches, but that's to be expected. The important thing is, it loads up, it comes with a stylus, and it has these pre-installed games. Thank you, eBay seller. On CEX at the time of recording, an Aqua 3DS goes for £185. I purchased this on eBay, including delivery, for £183.62. just cheaper than the secondhand shop. And that's my DS and my 3DS games covered. The next console I purchased was a Game Boy Advance in purple, and I was actually genuinely excited to win this auction because this is the one I had growing up. I purchased the Game Boy Advance in purple on eBay for £170 and 51p. At CEX, I could have spent £90. And you're probably thinking, whoa, why have you done that? And I will explain later why I've done that. Trust me, you want to hold on for that. That is my Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games sorted. And the last console that I purchased on eBay was a black DS Lite, and I know what you're thinking. Will, you don't need it. You've already got a 3DS for DS and 3DS games and a Game Boy Advance for Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games, but it's not the DS Lite I was after. It was what came inside it. I purchased this DS Lite for £44 and 56p. At CEX, it would have cost me £70, so a decent win there. However, it gets so much better. Hang around to Generation 4 to hear about that. Onto the games, and we're gonna get this out of the way. I already own a Switch. I already own a game from each generation of the Switch. However, writing the script, I realized I forgot to buy one of the Let's Go games, but be honest with me. Am I really missing anything with that? Do I need another Kanto game? Let me know. Should I purchase it for a forever save file? So just to let you know, I have opened the packages, I've tested the games, but I have not seen if there's a save on any of them because, let's face it, why do this if you're not going to make another video about save files? Am I right? Hey, remember that Game Boy Advance I purchased for £170 and 51p? Well, it came with Pokemon Blue. Pokemon Blue at CEX, unboxed, would have cost me £35. It probably would have been in better condition, and I know what you're saying. Will, that doesn't justify the eBay price. And to that, I say, this is a video, I can't hear you. We also managed to pick up the definitive Pokemon Yellow for £25 and 54p, whereas at CEX, it would have cost me 40 English beans. Hey, remember that Game Boy Advance I purchased for £170 and 51p? Well, it came with Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Gold and Silver. A games console and 3 games for £170. Is that eBay price seeming a little bit more fair now? Again, please don't answer that. This is a video. At CEX, Pokemon Gold and Silver combined would have cost me £80, which means the total CEX spend for this bundle, this £170 bundle, would have been £205. Now, the thing is, we don't need 2 base games of the same generation. If I could have got Pokemon Crystal, I would have got Pokemon Crystal, but this was too good to pass up. So, I'm actually going to sell on Pokemon Silver to the enemy. Won't lie, the choice to sell Pokemon Silver kind of cut deep with me because it was my first proper Pokemon game. Like, I had played my cousin's Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red, but this was my first game. I got it for being big and brave at the dentist. My mum bought it for me. She doesn't buy me video games anymore when I go to the dentist, so I have no incentive, so I just don't go. Gosh, I hate the dentist. Genuine fear. I can feel my jaw tensing just speaking about it. Hate the dentist. So as much as Pokemon Silver does have that special place in my heart, I utilize it a little bit later on in the video, and it'll become clear why I chose to sell Pokemon Silver over Pokemon Gold. Actually, while we're here, shout out to my mum, a single mum who worked ridiculous hours but always made sure that my hobby could be experienced and she would sit down and share it with me as well. We'd play games together like Mario Sunshine and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone on PlayStation 1 and the Goat game, Over the Hedge. Now, because of my mum buying me Pokemon Silver at the age of 6, I was 6, not my mum, I was so keen for Generation 3, and wouldn't you know it, my best friend's parents at the time had the best job in the world. They owned an independent game store, baby! So I managed to play Generation 3 3 days before release. I remember at the end of school, me and Gino going back to his house. I played Pokemon Ruby, he played Pokemon Sapphire, and that's all we did that Friday night. That was honestly, that is my Pokemon highlight. Getting to play a game before release day. Generation 3 is my favorite gen. So, of course, I had to pick up Pokemon Ruby on eBay, but I'm not just excited for that. I'm excited that I got the manual with it as well, because that means I can do the Reggie puzzle Legitimately, I never got round to it when it was released. I'm so excited to do that and have to read the Braille puzzles and flick through the manual. I'm well chuffed with that. I picked up Pokemon Ruby with the manual for £43.75. At CEX, for just the cartridge, it would have cost me £65. I would have loved to pick up Pokemon Emerald, but Pokemon Emerald stonks are on the up. So it'll cost as much as a Nintendo Switch, or according to this eBay listing, a dozen Nintendo Switches. I love it, but I just can't justify that. Growing up, I used to love the Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green games, so last week I managed to pick up Pokemon Leaf Green. And now with Pokemon Blue, Yellow, and Leaf Green, you see why I'm really not fussed about picking up a Let's Go game. Unless you really think I should, let me know in the comments if it's worth picking up. I'm ready to jump back into the Sevi Islands on potentially my favorite remake of the Pokemon game series. I picked up Pokemon Leaf Green for £20 and 3p, whereas at CEX it would have cost me £85. And now saying that out loud, I'm not sure this cartridge is legit. Now onto the final generation that young Will played on a physical cartridge. Young Will used to own a Pokemon Diamond, however 30-year-old Will has opted to buy Pokemon Platinum for the whopping amount of fire types in the game. No, it's because I've never actually played Pokemon Platinum Vanilla. I've only ever played it as a randomized Pokemon Nuzlocke while I was streaming, and back then, it took me over an hour to do the Distortion World. So instead of focusing on my actual flaws, I'm focusing on my new Distortion World PB. Because you know what? Some things are more important in life. I purchased Pokemon Platinum for £55 and 92p, and this is the most expensive single game so far. At CEX, you can't buy just the cartridge alone, so it would have cost me... The script it's just cut off that line of the cost. CEX doesn't do a Platinum cartridge by itself, and this is a trend for the rest of the video, so purchasing Pokemon Platinum at CEX would have cost me £120. And that's not even the most expensive game on this list, because on Generation 4 remakes, do you remember me purchasing that DS Lite that I didn't need to buy? That's because it came with Pokemon Soul Silver. The title of the listing was "With One Game." No one actually read the description. This guy did. That one game is Pokemon Soul Silver. So not only do I have a Generation 4 remake game, I also have a bonus DS Lite that I can flip for profit. I'm a genius. Alan Sugar, hire me up. What's up, gang? That just wasn't in the script, was it? This Soul Silver cartridge with the accompanying DS Lite cost me £44.56, whereas at CEX, with no option to buy cartridge alone, Soul Silver would have cost £135 without the Poké Walker. So I now have a DS Lite that I don't need. And the funny thing is, I already owned a black DS Lite, so I have two DS Lites I don't need and a copy of Pokemon Silver. So we're gonna sell them back to CEX. I took the two DS Lites, Pokemon Silver, and a couple of PlayStation 5 games that I'd finished to CEX to see what I'd get in for a trade-in price for a Generation 5 game. Bear in mind, Pokemon Platinum was my most expensive cartridge-only game, and it finished on £55. That's basically where Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2 cartridges started at. So I knew if I was going to be spending that much money, I would rather get it from a place where the cartridge would have been tested and I can return if it was faulty. So I traded in all of that lot for Pokemon Black 2 at CEX. For two DS Lites, Pokemon Silver, Mafia the Old Country, and Final Fantasy 15, I got £141. I then purchased Pokemon Black 2 for £115 and left with £26 store credit. Profit, baby! Now, weirdly, Pokemon Y was surprisingly cheap to purchase from CEX. At CEX, you can buy Pokemon Y boxed for £40. On eBay, I paid £33.77, and it's at this point I realized maybe I've had the blinders on for a second. Maybe it would have been better if I got it from a reputable company for that extra £7, where it's been tested and I can return it in case it's broken. I elected not to do that, So hopefully it's good. As they say, hindsight is 2020. But the game, and I know I've said this a couple of times, I am most excited to jump in on is the Gen 3 remakes. And this might divide the audience. Like, as much as I have a love and affinity for Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, I also love the physical special split, the minor quality of life changes from Generation 4 onward. So I'm actually really excited to jump into the copy of Pokemon Alpha Sapphire I picked up. My eBay purchase for a boxed copy of Pokemon Sapphire was £35.98, whereas at CEX it would have cost me 48 English beans. Honestly, with Generation 7 it was an absolute no-brainer to the game I was going to pick up, Pokemon Ultra Moon. This is because ghost types are my second favorite type. I absolutely love playing with poison types and the absolute shenanigans you can get up to. However, ghost type lore on each Pokemon is so cool to read. So I love the stories behind ghost types. So of course, I'm picking up the game with Lunala in it. Whilst I have played Pokemon Moon on an emulator, again, it was a randomized Nuzlocke, so I've never actually played the game vanilla. I have never reached Ultra Necrozma, and quite frankly, I do not want to put up with the Kojima-sized cutscenes of the OG Gen 7 games. I'm not doing it. I'm just not putting myself through that, no. Tutorial Island is long enough as it is. For the final generation that I needed, I picked up Pokemon Ultra Moon for £39.76, whereas at CEX, this would have cost me 50 English beans flat. And with that, we have got games from every generation. Now the question is, was it financially sensible to do so? No! But that's not the question we're here to answer. Is it better to put your trust in eBay auctions and strangers on the internet, or go to actual stores like CEX and GameStop? And did I go over my £700 budget? Whilst there are benefits to shops like CEX and game shops, and there are benefits to places like eBay, I'm not sure if you've been keeping track, but every single purchase I made was cheaper on eBay. Out of my £700 budget, I spent £653.49. Just under that budget. So how does CEX compare to my purchases on eBay? With the final CEX number, I did not include Pokemon Black 2 because I didn't spend any money. I elected to go to CEX. I traded in electronics to purchase it. I'm just comparing it to the actual items I spent my own money on purchasing things on eBay, my £653. Those purchases, how much would they compare at CEX? To purchase everything I bought on eBay from CEX would have cost £968.
What? What the f?
And that is not including the £115 copy of Pokemon Black 2 I got. It would have cost over £1,000 to buy everything I purchased on eBay, so if anything, my wife cannot be mad at me. I made good financial decisions. I am a grown-up with grown-up money. So what am I going to do with these newfound games? I am going to create my forever save and start making videos again on this channel where I am building my forever save on each generation, and I'm so excited to jump back into the games I loved as a kid.